Good day, podcast community. Pete Kane here, Podcast Pete and certified high performance coach. And we have a special guest on the show today. So put all your distractions down, and I think you'll be very interested in what we are going to cover today. So, Alin, tell our viewers who you are, what you do, and who you serve, and then we'll get into our podcast.
Yeah, so I'm Alin Armstrong. I do a host of things, maybe too many things, but I'm best known for writing the book, The Bible and Bitcoin. And I have other books as well that I've written after that, but that's my best known one. And basically, what I do is I educate people on Bitcoin, specifically in the context of Christianity and the Bible. Although I do some, other education around Bitcoin, but it's usually in that context.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I came into contact with Bitcoin and I learned about it, did the research, and then discovered that this was something more than just some investment I could make, that it went a lot deeper than that. And so I decided to write my book and try to help the Christian church understand Bitcoin, because I think the biggest problem we have is a lack of education in this area. Most people just don't know what Bitcoin is, and I mean, you can't blame them. We've all been there. It's a new technology. It's a paradigm shift. I think that's the best way I can put it. It's a paradigm shift, and paradigm shifts don't come easy. Often they're painful because you have to change some of your assumptions and challenge some of those things that you've just presupposed were true. And so, yeah, I serve the Christian church, and above and beyond, I serve Jesus Christ, and that's it. That's what I'm here to do.
I love it. Well, I listened to your podcast with Natalie, and I read a lot about it. I have the book right here, so I read the book. I wanted you to kind of give our community your spiritual journey and how that related to your Bitcoin journey. Were there anything similar in that discovery kind of journey that you could share with our community?
Yeah, so there were, I guess you could say, some similarities, but the similarities were at different scales. I would say how I experienced it. And so, in terms of my spiritual journey, I grew up in a nominally Orthodox home. We come from Romania, and so we immigrated to Canada in the late 80s, and I grew up in Canada. Although I was born in Romania, I don't remember it. I was so young. And so I grew up in Canada in a nominally Orthodox home, didn't have any religious education. I was aware of the Bible stories that most people are aware of, although I think we take that for granted now because I don't know how aware kids today are. Like, I knew about David and Goliath. I knew about Jesus at a very surface level. But that's really where it ended. We didn't go to church, or anything like that, except for weddings or holidays or big events. But day to day, week to week, there was really nothing there of substance. And it wasn't until I got a little bit older, my boyhood dream was to become a professional wrestler, actually. And when I did do that, but it was an empty business. It left me disillusioned. You get, it's like that situation where you want to do something, you want to accomplish something, and then you do it and you realize, well, this is not what it's cracked up to be. This is a lot less than I expected. So it left a hole in my life because I was like, well, this is all I ever wanted to do was wrestle, and it didn't satisfy at all. So I went on a journey to try to figure out what the heck I'm here for. What's the
Mm-hmm.
point of this life, you know? I needed to find, and so I became obsessive with that journey. I had to figure it out because in my mind it was, if I don't figure this out, then really what's the point? Like I might as well just, as the Bible says, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you die.
Mm-hmm.
Really no purpose. So yeah, I went down that journey and looked at all types of different religious um, ideologies and New Age philosophy and just a broad spectrum of things. And the one thing I realized was almost every single one of these religions, if you could call them that, they all mentioned something about Jesus Christ. You
Mm-hmm.
know, so Islam talks about Jesus. That's obvious. But even in these fringe New Age circles, they also mention Jesus. A lot of these books, these New Age books, these self-help books talk about, oh, Jesus said this or Jesus said that, or and they kind of use the words of Jesus as sort of a proof text to say, see, I'm right. you know, uh, and I stopped and I thought, why is everybody appealing to Jesus as some authority? I would expect that in Christianity, right? That's sort of expected. When
Mm-hmm.
I was investigating Christianity, of course, Jesus is appealed to as the authority. That makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
But in the other worldviews, I was wondering, why does everybody want Jesus for themselves? Why are they all appealing to him as an authority to prove what they're saying is true? It's almost as if everybody sort of has this underlying subconscious belief that if Jesus agrees with me, I'm right. So I thought, okay, it seems to me like Jesus is the linchpin here. Like he's holding it all together, and I have to figure out who he really is because there's conflicting Jesuses everywhere. There's the Jesus of Islam says one thing, the Jesus of the New Age says one thing, the Jesus of Christianity. So who's the real Jesus, right? Like, will the real Jesus please stand up? And through that journey of obsessive study and research, I came to the final conclusion that Jesus is alive, and that he rose from the dead. And that was really the main point for me, was if he rose from the dead, then everything he said is true,
Mm-hmm.
because nobody else has done this. I mean, the claim of Jesus is actually pretty insane if you think about it,
Mm-hmm.
because he told people, look, I'm going to die and I'm going to rise again. Now, if I were to say that, if I were to say to you, Pete, I am one with God, and God always listens to me, and whoever listens to me listens to God, and I'm going to die and rise from the dead, what would you say to me?
Crazy.
Yeah, you're crazy. Exactly. But what if I did it?
Yeah. Then that
What?
would be a different story.
Exactly. What if I did it? It's one thing to say it, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of wackos who say they're Jesus they're the second coming,
Yeah.
or they're God, or they're somebody special. There's a lot of guys like that, a lot of them. But Jesus actually backed it up. He actually did it, and that's what makes him so compelling, is
Mm-hmm.
that he actually did the proof of work. He rose from the dead. And if
Mm-hmm.
he rose from the dead, then everything he said could look, if somebody defeats death, okay, I, it stands to reason you could believe what they say about life and death. Maybe they have an insight into this life and death thing that you don't. Okay. And so when I discovered that Jesus, in fact, did rise from the dead, that was it. It was game over. I have to be a Christian. It would be illogical, it'd be foolish not to be a Christian if that's what you really believe to be true.
Mm-hmm.
And so in terms of Bitcoin now, where the similarities are, not so much in that because Jesus changed my life radically to set a new course. Like it was a total transformation. Bitcoin
Mm-hmm.
didn't do that for me. But what where the similarities are is in that I became obsessive again, and I had to figure out what is Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
Because it kept coming up in my life. Every 4 years, this thing kept coming on my radar, and I kept putting it off. And then I finally, in 2020, said, no, I got to figure out what is Bitcoin, because it
Mm-hmm.
seems to me like it might be important. Maybe I should figure this out now. And if it turns out to not be important, oh well, nothing's lost, right? So yeah, I went down that journey of study and research, and discovered that, yeah, Bitcoin is not just some investment to get rich or anything. It's a revolutionary technology that will help humanity get back to a sound money standard, which has all kinds of implications. And then when I read in my Bible what God says about money, and then I looked at the Bitcoin protocol, what I saw was a mirror image.
Mm-hmm.
Like, God says one thing about money, and then Bitcoin is coded in such a way as to reflect that. And so I'm looking at the Bible and I'm looking at Bitcoin, and I'm going, wow, these two things in terms of money and what it is, are a perfect match.
Mm-hmm.
And so once I discovered that, again, it was a situation where I said, well, okay, I guess I'm a Bitcoiner, not because I want more money, but
Mm-hmm.
because it aligns with my Christian worldview in a way
Mm-hmm.
that fiat money never can.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's sort of, I don't know if that was quick, but that's sort of my
No,
journey.
I like
Yeah.
that explanation and that story you shared. I met a gentleman, I don't know how many years ago, probably 6, and it was in the early phases of Bitcoin. And he was buying it at 1,000, 2,000. He kept like telling me, almost like somebody sharing the gospel almost. It's
Yeah.
like, let me just, this is what I'm doing. He was just telling me his journey, and I was going, man, that's kind of weird. I didn't understand it. And then fast forward a few more years, 4 or 5, I started leaning into it and learning more. And I heard things like fiat currency, and I was going like, what is that? And I heard some things that I just didn't understand. So for our community, explain what the word fiat means. I think these are novice people thinking, what the heck is debasing, fiat? All these terms we have heard as you start down a journey of learning more about Bitcoin that you could share with our community to help them understand more.
Right. So before Bitcoin, I had some understanding of fiat. It was very surface,
Mm-hmm.
but I used to say things like, dollars are fake, and oh, they're backed by bullets, things like this, right? I kind of knew money was fake,
Mm-hmm.
or the fiat currency, I should say, to be more specific, is fake. But the strange thing is, I never really, it never moved me to take action, which is strange, because if you believe something's fake, if you believe the money you use is fake and it's corrupt and it's rigged, wouldn't you want an alternative, or to try to change? Like, it was kind of just like, hey, yeah, it's fake, okay, let's move on with life. What can we do about, whereas other problems in my life, I never treated them that way. I always tried to find a solution or to do something better. So yeah, it wasn't until 2020 that I really started to dig into this. And I could tell you the basic, stuff you're going to hear elsewhere, like fiat money is this and that. But I come from it to this from a theological perspective. And really, to understand what fiat money is, I think you first have to understand this word fiat, where it comes from. Fiat is not an English word; it's a Latin word,
Mm-hmm.
and it means to let it be done, or it means to make a decree. It's basically, in the context of Genesis chapter 1, the word fiat is like a royal decree. It's like a king decreeing something. So when a king decrees something in his kingdom, it's kind of like, yeah, that's it. there's no vote, there's no debate. It's just the fiat decree of the king. That's what it is, and that's what the kingdom is going to now adhere to. And so in Genesis chapter 1, we see God saying, let there be light. Let there be this, let there be that. It's a common theme throughout the creation narrative. And that word in the Latin Bible is fiat. Let there be. That's how we translate fiat in the English Bible. Let there be. And so we see that all throughout Genesis 1, God's creating by his fiat, and he makes a value statement. So I've read Genesis 1, I don't know how many times, okay? And it wasn't until I looked at this through an economics lens that I realized, wow, this is an economic text. Now you might be thinking, how is it an economic text? God is decreeing his fiat, right? He's making real value, and then he makes a value statement. He says, let there be light, and then what does he do? He evaluates it, and it was good. So he's making things and he's valuing things. So what we can deduce from Genesis 1 is that the fiat of God is good. So God creates and he decrees it good. So he's creating real value by fiat. Then he makes man, us, in his image to have dominion over all of this value he just created, right? He says he made the man, he made the woman, he called them Adam, and he said, go be fruitful and multiply, subdue the earth, have dominion over it. And what he's doing there is he's giving us now an economic mission, right? Because to have dominion, to subdue the earth, is to basically, in theological words, do economics. Because what is economics? Economics is human action. And so as we multiply imagers of God on the earth, this needs to be scaled. Anybody who has children knows the more you add, the more complex it gets. And so now we're adding and multiplying, and God wants us to do this. So we have to scale this. And money is that intermediary tool that helps us to interact with one another, not with words, but with value. So my time, my labor, my service, you can't pay me in words. There needs to be an intermediary tool there so that everybody is rewarded for their effort, and we can continue scaling this mission God gave us. Okay, so that's God's fiat, and I've explained it as best I can, and it makes sense. The infinite God creates good value for us. Now we, in turn, take that and mold it and shape it and take dominion over it so that we can multiply more imagers of God. So God's mission is he wants more of his image, okay, everywhere. Flourishing. So what happens with fiat money now is man says, you know what, God? Appreciate what you did, but I think you're wrong. How so? Because the value that you created, I can also do. So God says, let there be light, right? And there is, and it's good. What fiat money is man saying, let there be money. It's the same thing. Let there be money. Now the difference between God and man is great, but in terms of money in this issue of fiat, the difference is fundamentally that we cannot create value by decree. Man has not been equipped to do that. What have we been equipped to do? Well, I just said it, to take dominion, to work the earth, to take what God has created, which is valuable, and use it. So we create value by sowing and reaping. We create value by labor and work. God does not create value that way. He creates value by decree. He's able to do that. He's God. We create value by sowing and reaping. So when we say, let there be money, we are trying to skip the sowing and get
Mm-hmm.
right to the reaping.
Mm.
And that doesn't work. There's a law in the universe that God has coded sowing and reaping. And when
Mm-hmm.
you try to skip the sowing and get straight to the reaping, you might have some quick results.
Yeah.
You might have a temporary, oh, this works, but eventually the thing collapses on itself, which is what we're seeing now. So fiat money is basically man saying, let there be money,
Mm-hmm.
trying to put themselves in the place of God by creating value by decree. And what that does is it creates a sort of elite group who can create the money while everybody else has to sow in order to get that money.
Mm.
But that's backwards.
Yes.
Everyone should have to sow to reap.
Yep.
This is how it is in the world, right? You can't sow a seed and expect a harvest tomorrow.
Yeah.
And even worse, you can't speak to the dirt and expect a harvest, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't go into the field and say, let there be, apples, and
Mm-hmm.
then get upset when there's no apples. But this is how fiat money works. And so it inverts God's design and it creates chaos in society, which is what we're seeing happening today.
Yeah, you definitely do. And let me go back in the book, and I know you talk about 2020, and we were aware of it in the US when the Canadian trucker strike went on and they confiscated bank accounts. They used money to strangle people's freedom. When you were seeing that happen, being a Canadian, were you already thinking about Bitcoin, already investigating, wondering about it, or was that the final straw that when you saw how a government can manipulate people through its currency and through its banking system?
So when that happened, I was already in Bitcoin
Mm-hmm.
for some time. And so I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was, And I remember when the truckers were there and it was going great. And then all of a sudden, boom, out of nowhere, the government takes this extreme measure and starts to confiscate funds. And I think the first one was with not PayPal. What was the GoFundMe?
Mm-hmm.
They confiscated the GoFundMe money, which I don't know why GoFundMe complied, because I think they're American. They could have just told them to get lost,
Mm-hmm.
but they did comply. And then the bank accounts were next. And I know people who donated I know a woman who donated $25. $25. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They froze her bank account for a week
Wow.
because she
Wow.
donated $25.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you people insane? Um, Now I donated Bitcoin, and so there was nothing to freeze. But and Bitcoiners did donate, I think, up to $1 million, and those funds were distributed, and Bitcoin showed that it worked. But yeah, I mean, for me, it wasn't the straw that broke the camel's back. I was already in Bitcoin, but
Mm-hmm.
I can say for many pastors who I know, it was.
Mm-hmm.
After that event, I had many calls with pastors from around Canada who
Mm-hmm.
said, I think it's time to get some Bitcoin just in case.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these were churches that were diversifying their church money because they thought, well, if they can just freeze bank accounts of peaceful protesters, then what's to say they're not going to come after the church? And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, so it was a wake up call for many Canadians.
Mm-hmm.
But I fear that has subsided,
Yeah.
and we've kind of gone back into a sort of slumber, if you
Yeah.
will. And there is a new bill in Canada that's waking up the Canadians again, but I'm a bit jaded now because
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, guys, we've been through COVID, we went through the trucker thing. And it took you like maybe 6 months to go back into a slumber.
Mhm.
Like, you guys just don't, you just forget, so quickly. And now there's a bill in Canada that will criminalize so-called hate speech from religious texts.
Mm.
So certain Bible verses that deal with certain things will be considered hate speech now. And so, look, everyone's up in arms about it. Protect free speech. Guys, you had so long to do this. You had so long to
Yeah.
to stand up and have a backbone, and you didn't. And now we're here.
Mhm.
We're here. And so I'm not even worried about it. I don't really even care, to be honest. I'm going to keep saying what I want to say,
Yeah.
and let the chips fall where they may. But here we are. This is a fiat world,
Mhm.
and it's a fiat clown world, and we're run by morons. Just to be frank,
Yeah.
the Bible says the fool has said in his heart there is no God, and it means what it says, right? The fool has said in his heart there is no God, and we have a whole parliament of politicians who say in their heart there is no God, and who decree value on their own authority, and who
Mhm.
now are coming out and saying, why are we surprised when they can just decree money into existence? And why are we surprised when they think they're God, and they could say, well, this is acceptable speech, this is acceptable thought, this is acceptable belief? They really think they're God. They
Mhm.
really do. And they're not. And I don't care what they say. Their money is fake. Their ideology is fake. It's all fake.
Mhm.
And God is real. And so take,
You said
you know,
in
put
if I
whatever bill you want forward. I don't care.
yeah. No, I
It's not my authority. Bill C whatever, hate speech.
yeah.
It's not my authority. It's not. I don't recognize it. Okay,
Mhm.
it doesn't mean anything to me. Anyways, I'm getting worked up.
Well, you mentioned in the book, and I know it's easy to get worked up because we're talking about, and I think everybody does a great job of keeping people distracted. And like you said, the 6 months after the truckers tried to go back to normal, it's like if you stay distracted, you don't really think. And when you
Right.
don't really think, you don't see the signs that are always out there. But in your book, you said you talked about thou shalt not steal, and you talked about the going back to neuro and the currency debasing. Share with our viewers what you mean by that when you wrote that and you shared that in your book.
Yeah. So that was sort of a light bulb moment for me when I was reading the Bitcoin Standard book, where Saifuddin, the author, talks about the Emperor Nero and how he was the one who was beginning to do some serious debasement of the coinage in Rome. And I thought, whoa, wait a minute, I've heard that name before. That's the emperor who persecuted Christians and who was one of the worst, uh, you
Mhm.
know, persecutors of the church, and with the Colosseum and the just horrible, violent acts, blaming Christians for a fire in Rome and just causing all kinds of chaos. And so, in the Book of Revelation, some interpret the mark of the beast 666 as being cryptically referring to Emperor Nero, because if you take that number 666 and you use what's that called, Hebrew numerology, uh, each letter represents or each number represents a certain letter. Anyways, it spells Nero.
Mhm.
And so I was like, "Oh, well, that's interesting. Isn't that just a coincidence that the most wicked antichrist emperor of all time is the one who debased the money?" And so I made that connection, and I thought, "Wait a minute." And it was around the time of COVID and stuff too, and I thought, "Wait a minute. That's exactly what's happening today. The
Mhm.
wicked rulers in our countries are doing the same thing. They're debasing the money."
Mhm.
And then you take it even further in the history, and you discover Constantine, the emperor who converted to Christianity. Well, what did he do? Well, he built Constantinople, and what happened there? He issued the coin, and I'm going to butcher how it's pronounced, the solidus, I think it's called, and it was a gold coin, 95%, I think it was gold, and he issued this coin, and he built one of the most lasting, prosperous empires of all time. So is it a coincidence that the wicked ruler debases the coinage, but then the Christian ruler keeps a sound money standard and builds a beautiful, prosperous empire, while the one with the debasing coinage crumbled next door? So it really, all this is great. All this history is fun, and you can make the connections. But really, at the end of the day, I discovered the simple command from God given to Moses, "You shall not steal," could have saved us all this trouble. Because that really is the monetary policy of God. It's so simple. It's so elementary. You shall not steal. But it's so powerful, and it's so true. We teach kids, right? Don't steal. Don't steal. Don't steal. It's simple. Children can understand property rights. It's almost like children instinctively understand it. It doesn't take long before a kid, 2 years old, maybe even younger, has a toy in his hand, and another kid comes and takes it. What does he do? He cries, he throws a tantrum, maybe he smacks the kid, he attacks him. Where did that come from? Why is he so upset? Well, because he understands. It's almost like it's coded into our DNA, this idea of property rights, this idea of you don't steal what isn't yours. But yet we've made it so complicated, and we've created loopholes so that we call theft by different names. We call it inflation. We call it monetary policy. We call it taxation. So long as you have representation, it's okay to steal, right? So that's really as simple as it is. And if we can just get back to it, it's like sports. I don't know if you play sports or you're into sports or coach sports, but in sports, what's like the first thing you're told and constantly? The fundamentals, right? Learn the fundamentals. If you're going to play hockey, skates. Learn to be a good skater. I know a lot of hockey players, they take figure skating lessons. Why? Because they realize, if I'm good on my skates, I'm going to be a good player. It's not doing the fancy moves. It's can you learn how to be a great skater and learn how to take a great shot, and that's all you really need to do. And in terms of monetary policy, you shall not steal. That's it. Our tax code should be one page, and it just says, "You shall not steal." But
what would you say in your book? I liked the 6-week Bible study because it's rooted in truth and it's rooted in education. And I think the more we're distracted, the more we don't see those signs of stealing, of printing money, of just the taxation, the inflation. Try to explain to anybody the Federal Reserve and the monetary policy is like, good luck, because they sit there and they talk in circles about stuff. But what was your intention, like putting the book? I like the book because I read it in like 2 settings, quick. And I also like the fact about the Bible study. So what have you seen since you published the book? Are people understanding the value of really taking people through a 6-week series of understanding the Bible and understanding the monetary policy around the Bible and how it can be so important to educate people about that?
Yeah, so I ran the study at my church before I released the book as a test, and had great results, which then, because I wasn't sure if I was going to add that, I was like, should I not? I don't know. Let me test it. And so I tested it and had great results and thought, okay, well, if it worked here, then maybe it'll work elsewhere too. So I left it there, and I've heard back from people, good testimonies. People have run this study in their small groups or with just maybe a friend even.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of people even doing the study with their pastor, which has been very interesting and from what I've heard, helpful. I've received many reports from people who said, I want to give Bitcoin to my church, but they don't understand. And look, I get it. Like you're not just going to go to your pastor one day and say, "Hey, here's some Bitcoin," and he's going to say, "No problem." Well, what's there's a learning curve. There's a paradigm shift, like I said, that has to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so the book has been a great resource for people to help their pastor understand. And I've one guy sent me a clip of a pastor from the pastor of his church preaching, and he quoted my book in his sermon. I thought, wow, that's so cool. And so stuff like that, right? It's a simple study. It's designed for people who don't know anything about Bitcoin, have never studied monetary policy. I was hoping to take these complex issues and make them as simple as possible, because when you simplify these things, you realize that, yeah, they're complex, but at the root, they're quite simple. It's just theft. They're stealing from us,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a corrupt, fraudulent system. So when you realize that that's the case, you're not going to know all the intricacies of how the Fed works with, I mean, it's complicated for a reason. But
Mm-hmm.
if you can understand the base of how it's fraudulent, then from there, you can make a more educated decision. So yeah, I've heard great things about it. It's a great sales tool as well. I've used it to sell books. I had an atheist guy come up to me at a Bitcoin conference, and he said, I don't really believe in God. And I said, is there anybody in your life who does? And he said, yeah, my mom. She's always trying to get me to read the Bible. And I thought, well, isn't this great? You want your mom to learn about Bitcoin. She wants you to learn about the Bible. So why don't you buy 2 copies, call your mom, say, hey, mom, let's do a Bible study. And I told him, I promise you she's going to say yes. And so you win because you get to teach her Bitcoin. And then she wins because you get to read the Bible. So, we're bringing families together.
Yeah.
We're doing a lot of good. So I'm really thankful.
Yeah, I love. I heard it a long time ago, and I'll always say when somebody will say something about podcasting, or what do you do, and I say we generate leads, create cash flow, and we build thriving communities. If somebody doesn't ask me another question, I don't say anything more. I just simply might ask them some questions just to learn about them. But I think Bitcoin is, you have to be interested in knowing more. If you're not interested, like I heard Mark Moss, who we both know, like, why doesn't Warren Buffett understand? It's like, who cares? He's 95 years old and he's worth billions. What is he going to be interested in learning about something new? I
Yeah.
mean, so you have to be interested in something to want to find out. And I think you're right. If you're seeing inflation and you're seeing the government print money and you're seeing your buying power go downhill, if you can't be a little bit interested in what's going on, then it's just going to go right over your head and you're going to miss out on everything. So, what would you want people that are listening to be interested in? What would you say to them when somebody asks you a question? What spurs their interest when you're having a conversation with people?
Yeah, it's very contextual. But here's the thing, everybody deals with money, and in one way or another. And so everybody's interested in Bitcoin, whether they realize it or not, because they all deal with money. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
really, it's just a matter of finding the person's pain points and showing them how Bitcoin is a solution to that.
Mm-hmm.
So in my context, in the Christian world, there's a lot of apprehension around money, a lot of misconceptions about money. And so, usually how I get people interested is I don't really even deal with the money aspect of it right away. I try to build a moral case and just say, look, like God says a lot about money, and there's scriptures that talk about just weights and measures, and how God says, if you don't use just weights and measures, then he's going to judge the people of Israel. And so it's a big deal. Like, God cares about this a lot. Jesus goes into the temple and he flips the money changers' tables. Like, he he feels strongly about this, about money and fraud. And so if God feels strongly about it, then if you're a Christian, you should feel strongly about it too. And then and once they, okay, yeah, that's true. And so then now there's an interest. Okay, God cares, I should care too. What do you have to say? Do they always agree? No, but it opens the door, and now there's interest. And so, yeah, that's how I do it with Christians. But with other folks, like, find their pain points. Oh man, I can't afford this, or my life's becoming unaffordable. I got to work 2 jobs now. Well, why? Would you be interested in learning about maybe why that's the case, and how you might be able to fix that? Well, okay, sure. Maybe not, but just find those pain points, and because Bitcoin is a solution to a problem that everybody's facing. Well, not everybody, like you said, Warren Buffett's not having a hard time, right? I mean, he doesn't need Bitcoin, right? He why would he care? He doesn't need it. He's older now. He's made his fortune. Who cares? If I'm Warren Buffett, what do I care? I don't know if he has children. Maybe you care for your children. That would be a noble thing. But for him personally, he doesn't care. So find the pain points and leave Warren Buffett alone, I guess.
Yeah, I like that. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. So I have 2 questions, but before I get to those 2 last questions, I want to put on the screen. So I want you to just share with people how can they get your book, and how can they get in touch with you?
You can get my book on Amazon, all the different Amazon marketplaces. You can just type in The Bible and Bitcoin. You'll see it there. And or you can go to my website, thebibleandbitcoin.com, and buy it from there if you like. A lot of people ask me which one pays you the most. It's the same, honestly. Amazon royalties and what I get from personal sales, it's about the same. Now, if you buy it from my website, it'll be cheaper. It's on a discount there. So if you want to save a few dollars, you can buy it from there. But the shipping is going to take longer. So if you want it tomorrow, Amazon will get it to you that quick. If you don't care about tomorrow and you want to save $1, it'll take maybe a week if you buy it off my website. So, and then you can follow me on Twitter at Pastor Coin.
The banner jumps off of there after a few seconds. So I'll put that up there. There, I see it now. So yeah, you can do that. Now, 2 questions. The first one is, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you would want to share with our community?
Not really. I think you did a good job. Aside from the Bitcoin and money stuff, obviously, read the Bible and get to know Jesus Christ. He's the Savior of the world. We're all sinners. We all fall short, and we need mercy. And like I said, he's alive. And maybe you don't believe that. Maybe you think that's an outlandish claim, which it kind of is. And I sympathize with that view, because that was me. I also thought it was an outlandish claim. That's why I had to figure out whether it was true or not. Because if it was true, it changes everything. But if it's not true, it changes nothing. And so you really have nothing to lose except everything. And so go on your own journey and discover, is Jesus really who he said he was? Did he rise from the dead? There's good evidence to suggest he did. And I encourage you to look into that and to believe that he is the way, the truth, and the life, because he does live. He is alive.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And the final question is, what would be the one thing that you would want our viewers to take home from our time on this podcast?
Yeah, the one thing I think I would say is to invest the time and do the work to be sure of these things. Have the conviction. So first thing, invest the time to be sure about Christ, and then the second thing, invest the time to be sure about Bitcoin. If you don't, excuse me, if you don't, you're never going to have the conviction to make it through life. You know, just to be frank with you, because life, like Bitcoin, life is volatile. You know, there's highs and there's lows, and it's hard to predict those. You don't know when those lows are going to come. You don't know when those highs are going to come. And so you need a solid rock. You need a solid foundation and conviction so that you're not moved, so that, you know, like Jesus says, when that storm comes, your house will remain. And so do the work, do the research, get the conviction. One, Christ is Lord, and two, Bitcoin is sound money. And when you have that conviction and you're dealing in first principles, then the storms of life, the volatility of life won't, I mean, they're still going to hurt. It's still going to be hard. I'm not saying that you're going to be stoic or anything, but you'll have the conviction to withstand the storms and to have that forward-looking vision, so that the day-to-day distractions don't knock you off course.
Alin, thank you. I want to thank you so much for sharing with us and our community your story, your journey, and we appreciate your time and doing this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.